Life's a box of chocolates, friend. That's the way it goes. Sometimes it's a happy end, and sometimes it blows. When you don't understand, you just can't see it through. Just look to the man with one red shoe. Oh, and the world's gone mad. Oh, turn to America's dad. Oh, we'll come together, don't you see? Oh, Tom Hanks is for you and for me.
Howdy, partner, and happy TomHanksgiving. It's me, your best good friend, Elvis Kunish, and we're here today to say so long. For now, we have covered every single Tom Hanks movie, so that means this is our final episode. But don't worry, the podcast will come out of retirement every time he makes a new movie, and it looks like the next one is going to be in 2018 with the Steven Spielberg-directed The Papers. But what does that mean we're doing today? Well, we're going to try and piece together everything we've learned to see if we can't come up with some greater Hanks meaning, Robert Langdon style. And I couldn't do today's episode without my great co-host, the buzz to my Woody, the hooch to my Turner, Mr. Andy Greene.
Hey, thank you. I love that intro. We got there. We're here.
We made it. We're here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've put some yeoman's work into this show, and you've seen them all.
I have literally...
Except for the Pacific.
That... He's not in it.
He's a narrator. I'm just kidding.
Oh my god! Cancel it. We gotta go.
Sorry, we're actually changing. We're gonna do the Pacific now.
The Ken Burns documentary. Well, you know what I did do last night? I've been antsy about this recording this final episode for a while now. Obviously, we've been building up, and we've done every movie he's been ever in.
I feel like we had the schedule 2 months ago.
We did, yeah. I basically, when I knew it was like less than 10 to go, it's like, all right, this is it. This is the day. So, but I was really nervous because this is the first time I've recorded a podcast and I haven't had to watch a movie beforehand.
Feels a little bit weird,
It
right?
felt weird, and I felt like I gotta watch something to just take my mind off of, I don't know, the anticipation, I guess. But it felt wrong to watch something that wasn't Tom Hanks, but it also wouldn't be like, I can't watch one of the movies again because then it's like playing favorites a little bit. So I ended up actually watching the 30 Rock 2-parter where he's in the very end. So it felt like a nice little button on the
That's
the whole
fun.
thing.
Yeah.
And he's great in it.
Okay.
And that's all I have to say about that. So we're never doing an episode on it.
There you go. We got the 30 Rock episode right there.
There it is. That's going to be the episode title.
30 Rock.
This is much more like the very first episode,
right?
Which was like an intro to the podcast, the TomHanksgiving appetizer, as we called it. Both you and I sat here on this very same couch about 2 years ago.
Pretty good couch.
It is a good. It lasted longer than the show did. So yeah, I listened to that first teaser episode of the podcast, and boy, was it rough. but it was still really enjoyable looking back.
Good. Have we changed?
I think,
or maybe that's jumping the gun. We don't know yet.
We might get. We'll find out.
Yeah,
if we've changed. No, but I think we have. I'm worried that our opinions of Tom Hanks haven't. Because that episode, we kind of like do like a little, here's what we're going to get into. And I was shocked by some of the cogent insights we already had before we did this show. And I'm a little like, did I fucking learn anything? Like, we talk about how he's a father figure in so many of his roles. And
right.
I was shocked that we used the phrase America's Dad way back then.
Wow, so...
Yeah, that's the theme song, like the newest theme song we've had for the show. It was on SNL, but we said it 2 years before that.
Hey, there we go. We're on it.
So yeah, I'm a little panicked that like maybe I don't have it. Maybe I said everything at the get-go.
Yeah, I think there's also maybe some unfortunate things we've learned. Not in terms about Hanks himself, but as an actor, like it's been 63 episodes, like 62 movie. I mean, all TV shows.
62 movies,
TV shows,
and one SNL episode.
Right, and through all of that, do you still love Tom Hanks?
This is an easy question, because yes, I do.
Yeah,
I still love Tom Hanks.
That'd be like, it just would end, I think, if you said no, and then click.
I do. I will say, though, I think when the holiday even started, and kind of when the show started, there was a part of me that I think was was trying to justify the pun more than anything else at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I did believe all those things were true. It was like, oh, there's a Tom Hanks movie for everyone. He's so good that he's in so many different good movies that maybe if you don't like this movie, you'll be able to find a movie that you do like together. And that's why he's great at bringing people together. And I always believe that, but there was a bit of me that was just kind of like talking it up and like, oh yes, he's the patron saint of cinema. That's what we said at the very beginning of the show. And is he the patron saint of cinema?
I mean, I'm not really sure. Like, what would that mean?
I don't even know what that means, really.
Well, but like, patron saint for me is like, okay, so he's like, well, again, it goes back to what we were saying, where we probably shouldn't deify anyone as that.
Right. I would take that away. I wouldn't give it to someone else.
Right. I don't know. Like, I think
But
patron saint of cinema should probably be a filmmaker.
It would, yeah. So it's Stanley Kubrick's the patron saint of cinema. Not Tom Hanks.
But like, in terms of, patron saint of acting, I still don't think he would be there. But like, he's also maybe one of the more approachable, human, family man people figures.
Well, here's the real talk.
Right.
When you ask people, most people, at least in my experience, when you ask them who they think is the best actor in all time, if they don't go like someone dead, like
Laurence Olivier
or Laurence Olivier or something, Hanks is like number 3. He's always up there. He's in the top 5 every time. But Tom Hanks rarely makes the number 1.
Yeah, it's Daniel Day-Lewis.
It's Daniel Day-Lewis. Meryl Streep is up there.
Right.
And I could kind of concede to that.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're judging it on the merits of can this actor do anything, Tom Hanks has his limitations. He's not the best actor in the world.
Would you say, and this is
he's still my favorite actor.
He's still your favorite? Is it because you have to? It has to be your favorite?
Well, familiarity breeds contempt in this situation. Although sometimes, there's a lot of love. I've looked at his acting and his filmography, obviously more in depth than anybody else's.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, because this is probably the only actor who has more than a few credits that you've seen every single thing he or she has been in. Yeah. Same with probably filmmakers. I mean, beyond Edgar Wright or something who's done like 5 or 6. Like if you haven't seen every Spielberg, I haven't seen every Spielberg.
He's like my favorite one. Even Stanley Kubrick, I still haven't seen all of his favorite.
And
films.
it's sometimes fun to leave those as future discoveries, or
which was kind of the first thing we did with looking forward to TomHanksgiving was there were a lot of movies I hadn't seen, so it was about discovering them, and a lot of them were great discoveries. Some of them weren't so great. I always had something to say about most of them.
Well, that's good.
Which is we'll get into a little later about finding the value in this kind of grand experiment. But back to Hanks specifically.
As an actor, I was going to say, I think kind of maybe the difference between Hanks and certainly Daniel Day-Lewis, and I was going to put Gary Oldman in that kind
Gary
of
Oldman
thing.
is another
someone
top contender.
Who, when you see
Denzel Washington, another top contender.
And I don't know, I feel like whenever you see an actor, especially if you're you or I, we're so familiar with these actors, they never completely, you're never going to see on screen and be like, oh, that doesn't look like Denzel Washington, or that's not Denzel Washington to me. But I feel like Tom Hanks, more than a couple of those other people, doesn't necessarily ever lose himself completely. I feel like he is Tom Hanks as Forrest Gump.
We'll get into, is it always himself or is it versions of himself, and the opinions there.
Because part of the reason we love him is the Hanksiest lines and stuff, and that's basically not him acting. That's just him, the true distilled Hanks that we know and love. It's the charisma and the charm that we love him for. But he is a great actor as well.
Yeah, I think it especially going back to, if you base it, can this guy play anything, or can this guy or girl play anything, that's your metric. Hanks doesn't succeed there, but
he does have range and he does have diverse choices. Some of them don't work, but bless him for trying.
Absolutely. Even in his worst roles, I would say his absolute worst role, his worst performance I've ever seen, is him in Fallen Angels, the episode of the show he directed where he plays Trouble Boy number 1. And Elliot and I were in that episode, and we basically, it was it feels like a high school play. Hanks directed the show better than he was performing in it.
Oh, no.
And he's not a great director. That's his other big limitation.
Yeah.
Outside of That Thing You Do, which is wonderful.
I really love that movie. It's one of my favorites.
I love it too.
It's just a happy thing. And going back to him as a happy, genial thing in the world, I think that is something to be celebrated for sure. He is a nice guy.
Here, another.
We'll talk about that. I think
slightly leading into the more personal conversation was when we had started the podcast and like going through it, I had at a certain point had to dig deeper and find more personal meaning
Right.
from Tom Hanks, from these movies, just for myself to keep going and, you know, make this, you know, worthwhile beyond like, oh, we're just going to review a movie every week.
Yeah, surface level.
So a big part of that was like, and I think this kind of led to the whole deifying thing,
Right.
which we're backing away from now.
Yeah.
But posing Tom Hanks as a role model, as specifically a positive masculine role model in today's society where,
there are a lot.
good God,
Yeah.
it's just an abyss.
Yeah.
And he's not perfect, as we've said. But there's like a very selfish thing about it where for me it's like, oh, here's a cis straight white guy. I mean, asterisks because we don't know the inner details of his personal life, of course. But presenting as such, who pretty much everybody can get behind. They're not his favorite, but like everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, Tom Hanks is cool.
Right.
Which is not like, you know, and the very insecure, selfish side of me is like, I want to make sure I'm cool. And that kind of leads into the Hulk article, the Film Crit Hulk article.
Right.
So for context, there's a writer online who goes by the pseudonym Film Crit Hulk, and he publishes on Birth Movies Death. And he wrote this article called On Criticism in the Intersectional Age. And it's really kind of this look about the reactionary culture of film criticism and how sometimes there's a tendency for white guys to try and insert themselves into conversations that aren't really about them, and his kind of breakdown of how it's really important to listen and how to accept being wrong. It's sort of articulating a lot of things I was having over the course of this podcast, and I'm failing to articulate in the sentence now, but sort of reaching this more benevolent kind of spirit of Hanks, this philosophy of Hanks we've been building throughout the show.
Just about how to behave.
And like,
how to react or listen, really.
And listening and recognizing it's not about you.
Yeah.
And sort of doing this podcast has been making it about me in that sense, and sometimes I do protest too much, or I try to start arguments that maybe when we're discussing the movies and whatnot,
right,
that maybe I don't have the authority to, or I just, maybe it's not coming from the right place. It's like inserting myself into a story.
Right, or it's like a necessary, or like the desire to be right about something.
Exactly.
When there's not really, it's a movie, everything is
and there's absolutely stuff
subjective
to talk about, and
right.
should be, and again...
Oh yeah, we should disagree and have
yeah.
a conversation about it. But yeah, right or wrong, it comes from a place, a bias or of insecurity a lot of times.
And Hanks was a great way to tie it back into what I was saying earlier. He kind of became this embodied, like, oh, he's this positive masculine role model. This is a you know, someone to emulate. This is a spirit to emulate. And in that sense, it was like, okay, maybe he's not the best, but like the best actor, or his movies aren't your favorite, but everybody likes them, and it's like, here's a good way to behave.
Well, there's the caveat of that, and the danger of loving someone too much or whatever, and also...
I don't think that's the case for me.
No, yeah, but I think maybe at the beginning there was that of like kind of being blind to any of his faults, but now you've seen them all. You've seen it through film. You don't. You still don't know Tom Hanks as a person. And I actually hate hate is the wrong word, and I'm trying not to say that word anymore. I think that's a kind of a loaded bad word to be using. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's coming up later.
No, I know, but like I just like that I myself used him as a nice guy, because we don't know who he is personally. Like, I mean, it's his persona that we're reacting to, and I think there's a danger to always being like, oh, Christian Bale is a jackass or whatever, just because, I mean, he probably is, but like at the same time, we haven't met them. We don't know who they are.
There are stories, obviously, and that influences our opinions of him and the movies he picks, the way he behaves in interviews.
Right.
We are still only judging the persona, the public persona of Tom Hanks. But I love the public persona. There's no dissonance with his public persona. There is a dissonance with his overall milieu in film, but we're going to get to that later. And that's a really interesting conversation to have. But yeah, in terms of like the discoveries about him as a performer, a lot of it was more... Well, I learned to appreciate like techniques, I think, and like specific stuff in specific roles. And
I would say I also learned, and I knew this, that I mean, he has a comedy background, but I don't think until focusing on some of his early roles and just seeing kind of the slapstick comedic, physical comedian that he really was when he started. And then, I mean, he was in that same generation as like Robin Williams and other people making that comedy to drama jump, and he did it so well. But I feel like he did it so well that people don't even really remember the 80s Hanks that like is kind of my favorite. Like, he's more raw, and I mean, he's not as like, he doesn't have the same technique that you're mentioning, but I think his energy, I mean, he's off the charts because he's younger also.
Well, wait, true. And actually, he said in interviews about that kind of transition, like when he was, really young, still coming up, still getting just on his first movies, everybody was attracted to him because he was so loud and he had that energy and he just had that presence, but so much of that came from his lack of confidence in like doing the work. So he was like, I gotta be loud. I gotta be, I gotta be Hanks.
Yeah.
And then when he sat down with himself, and I guess he had done at a certain point enough movies where he was like, I gotta change my approach.
Yeah.
And that's when he was like, I can do the internal work for the character. And I think that's what paved the way for him going more dramatic, because there were more interesting roles, because there was more internal work to be done. And you definitely see that as he's aged, because his performances, they don't get worse. I think in many ways they get better, but they are more internal, more subtle performances.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess one more thought, and I think maybe we can then move on to
get into some of these.
But I was just going to say, he is not known for basically his sex appeal. I think a lot of a lot of the best actors are still beautiful people. Hanks is, I'm not saying he's unattractive, and that's not really the point.
No,
but he's kind of, in terms of a leading man, he is one of the few that I don't think is known in terms of his looks. It's kind of, he's almost a character actor that's a leading man.
It's also true of like how Hollywood has changed. I think, looks have always been superficial and overbearing, but you think of leading men back in the 50s and the 60s, like they weren't, I think they're much more similar to Hanks in his leading man, like Jimmy Stewart.
Well, I mean,
not unattractive, but he's no Robert Downey Jr. I think it's kind of become a more thing. Like you even look, it's partially tied to the superhero thing now, but like every leading guy who's like in modern cinema, they gotta have like a six pack. And it's like, this is new. Like,
and it's not like they're not bad actors or not good actors.
Yeah, no, they earn it.
Yeah.
But like that's necessary now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Like even like Harrison Ford is a super attractive guy. But when he was Han Solo and Indiana Jones in his prime, he wasn't built like Chris Evans or Chris
He was still
Pratt
much more approachable. And I mean, he was a carpenter, literally. That's kind of built into his mythos of like, he was kind of on the set and he was just kind of a little scoundrel.
But not in the same way.
No, yeah, he was always in shape. Yeah, it wasn't about like just being
these beefcakes are now.
The beefcakes.
We've never had a Tom Hanks beefcake is what we've been saying. But back to your sex appeal thing.
Well, I was gonna bring that up because and
obviously this is a whole different thing, bag of worms for female roles,
right? And I think that's probably beyond our capabilities of talking about it right now.
Until we do the Street podcast,
right? Well, I was gonna say that one of the things I've noticed in terms of you while listening to the podcast is that you actually are defensive about about Hanks' sex appeal, and I think. This is probably no spoiler to anyone here that you see yourself a lot. You see a lot of yourself in Hanks.
I do.
And if someone is not attacking but saying that Hanks isn't sexy, you take that as
that's male ego. That's male insecurity coming out, because it's like I always have that fear personally of being like, I know I'm likable, I know I'm affable, but like. Is there that element missing that makes me like the attractive person?
You just haven't found your Rita Wilson. It's fine.
Right, which of course is true, and I know that's not true because of relationships I've had.
Right.
And the fucking mirror. But no, I think having and it's mildly embarrassing to have those obvious insecurities just eke out of me and like kind of obnoxiously like force the women on the show like but he should be sexy, right, man? But I think doing the show in a weird unintentional positive has like made me like, all right, well, that was a stupid thing to worry about,
right?
And Hanks makes a joke about it on Saturday Night Live that like, America's dad, not America's sexiest man, huh?
Right.
That's great, and he's cool with it, like, and I think I've learned to be better about that. And then going back to the Hulk article too is like, stop trying to make it about you.
Right.
And I'm saying that to you right now, Elvis, who's editing this in the future.
Well, do you want to do a little lightning round where we...
let's change it up a little bit.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's get into the movies of
Yeah.
it. I mean, we spent a lot of time on this, and let's... So I have the rules for this. I have 48 films that he has been in that were non-cameos, non-TV.
Yes.
And I have them completely random. I did a random list generator.
Oh, boy.
And I think just... First thing that comes, like, kind of film word association, or I mean, maybe a sentence or two. I don't know. We'll just go for it. Bachelor party.
You've been ignoring all the like offensive quote unquote stuff. Just lazy.
I don't think you have to quote unquote it. It was offensive, and it's a bad teen party movie. That's Bridge of Spies.
Bridge of Spies, the one I want to rewatch the most.
Ooh, extremely loud and incredibly close.
We were way too kind to it in that episode.
Road to Perdition.
Not his best performance, but something surprising there.
That Thing You Do.
Oh, why do they break the fourth wall at the end? I don't understand still.
Bonfire of the Vanities.
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up because this didn't end up in my final performances list, but I wanted to cite this out. That's a messy movie. It's kind of a fucked up movie. It's probably not a good movie, but you should watch it because there's some fascinating electrical performance from Tom Hanks in that movie. Specifically, he gets a shotgun and shoots it at the ceiling and is going screamy full Hanks voice. I love it.
And I think, I don't think it was necessarily crafted properly, but I think if it had been, there was a lot to say about the world we live in today.
Right.
And 80s. I mean, it's kind of showing how nothing's changed in the last...
It's still to finish it off, that's still the most, it's the Hanks movie most ripe for a reboot.
Yeah. Dragnet. Speaking of reboots.
Least effective Hanks is the funny side guy.
Captain Phillips.
His best based on a real person performance.
Ooh, and he's been a few. Volunteers.
I think Volunteers was maybe my favorite comedy surprise in Discovery. It's the one I would recommend the most to people for like, oh, this is one you haven't seen, watch this one.
Every Time We Say Goodbye.
I don't want to see that one ever again.
Inferno. Same.
I don't want to see that one. Actually, I would probably rather watch that than Every Time We Say Goodbye.
Ooh, I don't want to see Every Time We Say Goodbye. Toy Story.
Still the best.
Turner and Hooch.
Still the best.
Larry Crown.
Larry Crown
still the worst.
Still is. I feel like it's easier to forgive, but it's maybe the most unforgivable, just in terms of its pure laziness.
Hologram for the King.
That's maybe the second one the second most one I want to revisit.
Cloud Atlas.
That's the one I probably should revisit the most.
The first time I saw it, I was on your side, and then I watched it again. I loved it. I think there's a lot to say. I think it was beautifully made. It's not like Hanks didn't deliver particularly fantastic performances, but like the gangster novelist thing, I thought was hilarious this time around. And I forgot that he just threw the guy off the fucking balcony. It was like
we filmed that scene.
I know. I forgot. It was just like one of the more like startling, like because I was watching with Lily, she hadn't seen it before, and she was just like, whoa. And it was just like, I don't know. It was about love, and it's about the universe, and it's about being good and bad and in past lives, and that stuff I think about. And I was just, I don't know.
My brain right now has it as sort of like the aesthetic is like Arrested Development season 4 convoluted.
Yeah.
But there's like a good spirit behind it. But I think if I was able to digest it again and rewatch it in the future, I'd probably come out a lot more positive.
Da Vinci Code.
I'm sorry, Ron Howard.
Charlie Wilson's War.
I should have liked that more.
Angels and Demons.
Still the best of the Da Vinci's.
Castaway.
I kind of wish we hadn't done that so early in the run, because I think we would have had a better conversation about it.
You've Got Mail. Yeah, that's a good noise. Maybe that's
it. I'll have some more to say later.
The Burbs.
I'll have more to say later.
Forrest Gump.
I feel
like you've said it on
I've said it all with Forrest Gump.
Toy Story 2.
Still my personal favorite.
Saving Private Ryan.
Just incredible, but it's probably not going to get mentioned again.
Splash.
Ron Howard, I love you.
Catch Me If You Can.
Catch Me If You Can is one of his best performances ever. Spoiler alert.
A League of Their Own.
A League of Their Own. This is so close to the top of the list. I think it's a better, like, if I think of, like, in terms of his best movies and most important movies and best performances, it's up there, but it didn't make the 10 I'm going to bring.
Ooh. All right. Well, I'll be a counterpoint on that. Your favorite film? Lady Killers.
I want to like this film more than I do. Maybe a rewatch at the next Thanksgiving.
I've never seen it. Saving Mr. Banks.
I just have no desire to rewatch it.
Formulaic.
Although I love his Disney.
Yeah, no, and I just love Mary Poppins, but Polar Express.
I want to watch that with you again, specifically.
You should have just said All Aboard.
I want to listen to that episode again. That's the best episode of our podcast.
It's the silliest. Here's my favorite Hanks movie, Mazes and Monsters.
You gotta watch it with a crowd.
The Green Mile.
The longest Tom Hanks movie.
It's longer than Cloud Atlas. It is long. It honestly feels so much longer than Cloud Atlas. I'll say that.
Still my favorite Hanks sex scene.
Big.
Big is... I got a lot to say about Big.
Still? Oh,
Still.
good. The great Buck Howard on the other side of the coin.
Honestly, I think it's... I did rank all the movies. We're not going to get into that, but I think it's Ithaca and The Great Buck Howard.
Oh, poor Colin Hanks. The Terminal.
Maybe I'd like it more on the rewatch, but that still didn't do a lot for me.
Nothing in Common.
Dude, you gotta watch just for that sexy horse montage scene.
Whoa. Okay.
I tried to find it on YouTube. You can't, so you have to watch the movie to see it. It's incredible.
What scene is it so I can fast forward?
It's in the middle.
Dang it. Sully.
So it's Ithaca.
Wow.
What'd I just say?
Great Buck Howard.
Great Buck Howard. Sully.
Oh, wow. Apollo 13. You kind of covered that one, but you had a lot of problems with that one.
Apollo 13 is a really good movie with some very fucked up behind the scenes race politics.
Sleepless in Seattle.
The Weakest Meg Ryan.
Ooh. He Knows You're Alone.
It's so bad it's good, maybe, but I don't even want to qualify it as that. It's just a fun, doofy, bad horror movie.
It's in the category with Polar Express for me, where like I loved watching it with you. It was so much fun. Joe versus the Volcano.
Every time I watch that movie, I like it more.
Yeah, I don't know. It's it is a journey, and I think that's kind of what we're on here. So I think that was it's the most TomHanksgiving-y movie for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because of this show, I have a relationship with Joe versus the Volcano that I don't think I would have otherwise.
Right, and it's that discovery when you're watching movies that you made with like Elvis Has Left the Building, and that I made with Cloud Atlas the second time, and that Joe versus Volcano. Yeah, I mean, there's a few of those, and those are, I think, the most fun to have. There's a journey in that movie, and there's a journey as us, as artists, as people, that I think that movie is what it's about trying to be a good person, about trying to be happy, about trying to find...
Be aware, be awake.
To be in love, to discover love, to know that love exists, to jump into the volcano, which is something as artists that we struggle with every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is a great movie for you to watch when you don't know where your life is headed.
Toy Story 3.
When I watched it for this last episode, there was a part of me that's like, this is better than Toy Story 2 in terms of like what it's saying.
The Circle.
Wanted it to be better. I still think his performance there is really interesting.
I think we were way too friendly on that one.
We were, but I don't think there was anything wrong with that.
Emma Watson wasn't good.
Oh no, Emma Watson was terrible.
Philadelphia.
Tom Hanks was good.
Sorry.
Philadelphia, oh my god. It's like everything is 100% good.
Punchline.
Punchline. One of the first like new discoveries for me when we did the show, and I still think there's something really... He's doing something very, very interesting with that role, and seeing his kind of wild... That's like perfect young Hanks mixed with an internal performance, because it's like wild, crazy defense mechanism Hanks for Stephen Gold, and but just the weird, fragile sadness inside him. It's something that feels... It's maybe the most... This is an artist performance Hanks has ever given. And I really like that.
I think it actually goes back to what you were saying, where he kind of sat down and was honest with himself. I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe after Punchline where he was struggling with that because he was doing the big stuff and then he was kind of coming in and trying to figure out who he was as a person, as an artist, as a comedian, even. And yeah, that movie is one of the biggest surprises for me, for sure.
Yeah, I might have to make a quick adjustment on my top 10 later.
The Man with One Red Shoe.
I will always love this movie because it gives me the best Tom Hanks cosplay. I'm wearing one red shoe right now.
And then to end it all, The Money Pit.
I want to see a movie with Tom Hanks and Shelley Long again. I want them to do one now.
Awesome.
So that was our lightning round.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what movie, and I think this goes on. What movie was ruined by the podcast the most?
Well, The Burbs is just a surprise.
And is that the answer? Because I know before you did that Burbs episode, Burbs is like one of your favorite movies. And it was always a TomHanksgiving staple. Like it comes every year to the point where I'm like, oh God, do we have to watch it again?
That's how I was feeling building up to The Burbs.
But then you took something new on like the 6th time watching it, right?
Mm-hmm. And it obviously was much harder to ignore with current events.
Right.
But I think The Burbs has to be the one that is kind of ruined for me because despite how much I love it and how like funny and good performances are and just how goofy it is, what it's saying, so we're recording this on the Saturday before this comes out, which is the day after / it's still going on of the Charlottesville, Virginia white supremacist rally. So jumping in real quick, this is Elvis from the future during the edit, just coming in to say that while we were recording this, the events in Charlottesville were still occurring, still coming out, and we hadn't the full story as things were still unfolding. So we're not getting into any specific of the gruesome details and the horrifying tragedies that have occurred. But just as a heads up, that's why there's some missing context here. And just for clarity's sake, fuck those guys. There's a severe problem with white supremacy, and I think we managed to articulate that throughout the rest of the episode. But just to say it here, this is not something that has to be up for debate. The conversations we allude to later in the episode are not about, oh, let's bring together and share ideas. That is not happening because white supremacy and white nationalism is an act of violence in and of itself. And we here at the TomHanksgiving podcast condemn it. And isn't it sad that this silly of a podcast has to condemn it? But anyway, getting into some of that heavier material going forward, you've been forewarned. Back to the show. Most of those people there in that are taking place in the group of the white supremacists, they don't think they're the bad guy. They think they're Ray Peterson from The Burbs. They think that nobody else knows that these people are bad, but I'm the only one who knows it, and I gotta stop it. And they'll see. The ends will justify the means. And that's the dark spirit at the bottom of Joe Dante's The Burbs. And that's kind of why I think it's unforgivable. I would say, and I haven't seen it as many times as you, and I honestly didn't read into that until you mentioned it to me, and that's why I was like, because it might have been a top 10 movie for me, and I was like, no, I can't in good conscience put it there. Part of me is like, well, maybe that's the whole point of the movie, is to show how wrong that is. But it ends with them proving to be bad. It's so close to showing how wrong that is. So if the ending was that he was wrong the whole time, that these are great, nice people, even if they're not just normal. They're just normal. Leave them alone. It was all paranoia. He has that speech. Again, we're parroting the Burbs episode now. But but that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it was very close, and maybe that was a network note, or I don't know, because I feel like Joe Dante. I have no idea, actually, of what he believes in. I don't think Joe Dante necessarily believes that, but I do think... But it shows you... That was his ending. He wanted there to be a monster. And that makes sense for Joe Dante, but that's the problem with that movie. And there's loaded things in films if you don't think about it, and I think that's what I learned from that article, where the semiotics and things, even if you don't intend on doing something, or that like you're trying to open up something, it's like, no. Someone with a different life experience is going to take something out of that movie wrong, but this one, it's like it's pretty like once you said it, it is about xenophobia, and it's like as an artist, there's that responsibility to be, aware of your potential messages, And obviously there are things like, oh, this didn't age well, but even looking at when The Burbs came out, I still think it's indefensible then.
Yeah.
It's like the freaking Nazis and white supremacy stuff wasn't as loud, but it was always there.
Yeah.
And the people that the Petersons and the cul-de-sac are fighting against, they are not white, but it doesn't
Right, they're
make it better.
immigrants.
Yeah.
And,
so that's the movie that's definitely changed the most for me.
it also, points out, I think I brought it up a few times, so I won't belabor the point, but the idea that Tom Hanks is so charming, sometimes to a fault in terms of, like, if he's in these movies that are kind of unfortunate in terms of the messages, and I think one of those movies is You've Got Mail.
That brings us to our list of top 10 performances.
And that was in my top 10 performance because he somehow makes that movie. I feel like no one else that I've talked to sees that movie as unfortunate. They think it's a wonderful rom-com with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. Sleepless in
and they deserve each other, And this is why. Okay, so Joe Fox in You've Got Mail is on both of our top 10 performances.
Yeah.
I agree. This is Hanks at his most weaponized charm.
Right, but it's scary, right?
It is scary.
Because he can make any sort of message or anything work. Like, he is a stalker, liar, more things, but
emotionally manipulative.
Right, and he ruins her company, he ruins everything, and yet she falls in love with him.
He destroys her, everything about, like, her individuality, and basically she kind of succumbs to his love.
It's about abuse.
Yeah.
It's psychological.
Like, that relationship's not going anywhere good.
Right.
But because he's so charming and he's so good at playing...
And they have chemistry. It's not a one-way street. Like, Meg Ryan is fantastic as well.
Everything in that movie is pointing in the direction of, oh, this is good, even though the underlying subtext is like, holy fuck. It's a testament to his acting ability that you watch this movie constantly, over and over again, 100 times, and you might not notice it because, everybody in it is so good that...
And we're programmed as, like, the rom-com culture. They're meant to be together at the end. Who cares about the middle where he's
But it's specifically him where he does these despicable actions, but you still think he's just a goofball.
Right.
Well, take him to the mattresses.
Exactly. And just, his last name is Fox. Not that it was on purpose, but there's something scary there.
So that's one of our 10. These are in no order for me. Was there an order for you?
I did an order, but I don't think
let's abolish the order.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump in with one. If it's one of yours too, then we'll share it too. I'm gonna go with it's kind of an obvious one, but I'm gonna go with Chuck Nolan in Castaway.
All right, I got that on my list. I put it 6.
I really wanted this to be Scott Turner in Turner and Hooch, but he does everything he does better. He does everything he does in Turner and Hooch better here in Castaway.
Okay.
Because, let's be honest, it's Tom Hanks carrying an entire movie.
Right.
And he makes you cry when a volleyball goes away. And that's all him. There's some art design, obviously, and direction and whatnot.
Well, I was going to argue that Wilson's his best foil. So Hanks literally is his best foil. It's that inner struggle.
It's true. But that he can make. Castaway isn't the strongest movie in his library. Obviously,
yeah,
it's a little obvious. It's a little predictable, but he's fantastic in it. The fact that he can make you watch this entire movie, most of it where it's just him talking to himself, ostensibly, and it's compelling and it's real, and there's change within his character every scene. And
he goes through the ringer and he does pretty much anything you'd want in a movie. Like, from the dentistry.
Oh my God!
To just just the lonely and despair and just you kind of go through that.
You feel every emotion
there.
In that movie, except for lust.
Yeah, there's not a lot of lust.
There's romance.
Yeah.
And there's longing, but there's no lust. But that's okay. And also to note, his most physical transformation for a movie, I would say. So he can do the Christian Bale thing too.
Yeah. No, I would say, it's the stranded on a desert island survival thing is a trope of movies, but this is one of the better ones in terms of a performance for sure. So I agree with you there.
So why don't you jump in with another one of yours?
Well, we've talked about it a little bit, but I put Punchline on the list.
I'm glad you put it. It's not on one of mine, but you go for it.
Well, I mean, I think we kind of talked about it, where I think it really was actually this inner struggle. I didn't really. Again, this is a discovery in this episode right here. I don't think it was actually distilled for me until you mentioned, before how he sat down with himself and was honest. I think that's the struggle in Punchline of like being a comedic actor. Or taking himself more seriously, or trying to just be too loud,
or even that could be, and this is putting a meta text on it.
Yeah.
But Punchline could be how he that's the translation of him having done the work. Stephen Gold is a guy who doesn't do the internal work.
Exactly, and there's a lot of I think problems with the actual movie itself, with Sally Field relationship, and how he's kind of he is a despicable character, Stephen Gold by the end of it.
But I think that's. Like, the movie doesn't justify that.
Right, and that's good, because it's not You've Got Mail.
Yeah.
But I think there's just so much range here, and also, just seeing him as a comedian, it reminded me of a movie called Lenny, which is really, really good. Dustin Hoffman as Lenny Bruce, a tortured comedian.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's much more tortured than this. It's much darker.
We'll talk about it in depth on The Offspring, our Dustin Hoffman podcast.
The Offspring. I don't know. I think it's just one of those. It also goes into a category of most underseen, most surprising performance.
That's why
That's why I want to bring it up as often as possible.
And just that scene of him in the rain
is so good.
That stands out to me.
That's him as like silent movie actor, physical actor, and
but
just
so
haunting, sad.
Yeah,
and he was insane.
That should be in my top 10. I'm gonna throw out something, but but you already said it, so I'm gonna go with this is an obvious one. I'm gonna get it out of the way, not because it's not great, but Woody from Toy Story and all the Toy Stories.
Yeah.
It's got to be in there. I'm putting them all in there. Because,
is it not number one? I did the same thing. I was like, I can't differentiate them. It's all one movie.
Yeah, I think, as we said in all those episodes, his best work is seen in the first one because it's the hardest one. He's got to invent this character from scratch. He's the most unlikable in that. But in every movie, he is so foundational to you being able to just follow the plot.
The heart and soul,
the
motivations.
motivations.
Yeah.
Well, heart and soul, we're going to get to that in a minute. In terms of, Hollywood oversaturation of celebrities coming in to do voices from animated movies to get butts in seats, Tom Hanks is not that. He's only done 2 other voice work. One was The Polar Express, and he definitely acts in that movie.
Well, yeah, it was like all like mocap and CGI weird stuff.
And the other was himself in the Simpsons movie for one of the greatest cameos.
Yeah.
So he's not this guy who's just showing up to do voice acting, but I still think it's strange because I think he's one of the better actors turned movie stars turned voice actor.
For sure.
And it's because he's just a fucking phenomenal actor, and his voice is incredible.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it.
It is a very goofy but wonderful, friendly voice.
Yeah, and Woody is someone... Oh, I did have more to say about Woody, actually. It's kind of, jumping ahead a little bit, it's kind of the opposite of his performance in Big, I would say. And this is kind of getting into, is he always playing himself, or are there different characters? I think there's definitely different characters, because what we see in Woody and his performance in Woody is we see the worst of ourselves and the best of ourselves simultaneously. And what I love about that movie and what he's able to do with the performance is he finds his strength through helping others who share his own personal weaknesses. Like we see that with Jesse's fear of abandonment. Woody overcomes his own fear of abandonment by helping her.
Right.
By knowing this isn't the right way to do. To make her feel better, we got to look on the bright side. He does that with Buzz in the first movie.
Right.
And he's able to reconcile, saying goodbye to Andy in order to help out Bonnie and stay with the toys in Toy Story 3. And for that, for me, that means like Woody is maybe the most like adult character we've gotten from. I mean, obviously he plays adults most of his career, but there's like an adult thought process.
Well, there's also like some of the most dimension of any of his characters.
Yeah, I mean, he's got
that's
3
the benefit
movies.
of 3 movies.
Yeah.
But also, I think just if you'd done the one,
if I was ranking, Woody would be 1 or 2.
Yeah, no, I put it 1 just because I think in terms of. It's what I think of when I think of Tom Hanks, along with Big.
Which is shocking because he's not in a frame of the movie. You don't see his face. And this is Tom Hanks, the movie star, but Woody is still right there.
And then, I mean, Big, I think we can brush over because we've kind of already talked about it, but it's the same thing. Like, he's the only one who can make that movie work, I think. And which is so good. And it also, we kind of talked about it, but he can act off anybody. And I mean, so we have Billy.
He can act off anybody or in absence of nobody.
Absolutely. Like a dog, a volleyball, a person, or an animation. I don't know, maybe he had Tim Allen in the same room with him, but maybe not. Maybe he was just recording by himself, and that just shows how good he is. Yeah. Also, Tim Allen, Buzz Lightyear would probably win my best foil of Tom Hanks.
When you think about it, it's gotta be Buzz.
I think it's him. You might not think of that because he's animated, but like that is the win.
I mean, that's the ultimate buddy movie too. Yeah. Sorry, Hooch. It's Buzz. For Big. And what also, just the only other thing, because we've talked about it so much, is he really just captures the zigzag of what it's like what a kid's thought process is like. And he's a true man-child, and I don't think, when you think of, the man-child in, like, especially today's modern cinema.
Right. Adult comedy
You would
movies.
never throw in Josh Baskin, but he's actually a man-child, and I have to wonder if, like, the success of Big ever, like, had, like, if it weirdly, I don't know if there's any way to track this, but if it weirdly, like, it influenced the sort of, like, arrested development we see with masculine culture, maybe even?
Right.
Because who doesn't want to be a big kid?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also think there's something good about being a big kid.
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's anything...
I think when you've, suit and tie and that's your life, like, you've lost. I mean, you've lost who you were. You're someone else now, but, like, just being... I mean, the message in that movie is you kind of want both halves of yourself.
Yeah, you don't want to be Alan Clay in A Hologram for the King...
Is that
it's not on my list. It's on your list.
No.
Oh well, he's also very good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I put him at full for the film, not for the performance.
Yeah.
That's one of Hologram for the King was almost a pick for the future because I am excited to keep watching it, and it was kind of like my prediction is that I'm just gonna love it more the next time I see it.
Do you want to watch it tonight? No. Okay. Pick your next performance.
Let's go with Captain Phillips.
All right. This one's not on my list.
I think it's almost a gimme, kind of, but like it's really good. I mean, he kind of is. I mean, he's a captain. He is the kind of. I mean, he plays the kind of the leader.
Well, until that guy shows up.
One again, Barkhad Abdi is one of the best foils, I would say.
Yes.
For sure. He goes through for sure is just. It's very physical, and he just gets beaten to shit in that movie. And I think, like when he's saved is one of the most powerful parts of that, or just kind of him.
His tears at the end.
Just like the kind of sense of relief / like, oh, he's not even, it's, what's the word? I mean, he's not panicked. I mean, he just doesn't know what's going on anymore. It's, I don't know. I just think it's pretty visceral performance. I don't know. I don't have too much to say. I just think it deserved mentioning.
Absolutely.
Sure. It's not my favorite movie, but I think he's pretty great in it.
It's his best. Again, I said before, it's his best performance based on a real person. But you bring up an interesting point, because we've been saying, like, there's so many good foils for Tom Hanks. Yeah. And this goes back to why I think he's such a great actor, and more importantly, why he's such a beloved actor. And it's that he, even though you always see a movie and you're like, it's Tom Hanks, maybe more so than a Daniel Day-Lewis who chameleons into whatever role he's in.
Or the method,
His performance never supersedes the movie he's in, outside of maybe one example I'll get to in a moment.
Forrest Gump?
No.
Oh.
His performance is always like, it can steal the scene, but it's still about the movie. It's never
he's a
about
team player.
him. He's a team player, and he's such a giving actor, and I think that's why he has so many great foils. Which brings me to not a foil, but to the next pick I had to put on this list was actually James B. Donovan from Bridge of Spies.
Oh wow, nice!
I know, kind of a surprise. Nobody thought this would get mentioned.
Another Andy episode,
but I think, and this is, I gotta revisit it because I only saw it the one time.
Yeah,
but his performance sticks with me in such a way because, well, going back to the giving performance there is, he's so generous as an actor, and like Mark Rylance when he accepted the Oscar was like, if you want to get an Oscar, work with Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
and I think that's because he's so giving as an actor. And what I love about this is it's Hanks' Atticus Finch, as we talked about in that episode.
Yeah.
And people like to complain about how it gets overly long, about how he has to go back for the pilot too, and that kind of clutters up. But that's the whole point of the movie. That's the whole point of the character, is that he's got the conviction to be courageous enough to do more.
He goes further than necessary almost.
So Bridge of Spies had to be on here because James B. Donovan is the most America's Dad hero Tom Hanks we've ever gotten. And he's Captain America without the muscles.
There you go. Good.
Plus, sidebar.
Yeah.
I don't really have any super depth to go into this, but Tom Hanks, we know him as a father figure, right? He's America's Dad. We know that whole thing. But how many movies does he have a daughter? I think there's...
Is it Bridge of Spies? And
it's Bridge of Spies.
Does he have one in Hologram for the King? I think he does.
And Hologram for the King. He has a daughter off-screen mentioned in Catch Me If You Can.
I'm sure Woody has a couple of kids.
Bonnie. But it's so interesting that he has such a lock on that personality, on that brand, but he's so rarely, and until his later career, never had a father-daughter relationship really in any of his movies. I think the strongest is probably a Hologram for the King.
The Burbs, he has no daughter.
He has a
sons?
son.
Yeah, okay.
One son.
Yeah.
And he disappears by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That was actually his first time playing a dad.
Oh, there you go.
But I just thought that was interesting.
That's a good point. And
I want to see Hanks and Shelley Long as a couple, and they have a daughter, and that's what the movie's about.
is that okay? Well, let's do a sidebar. I was going to ask you, maybe this is jumping the gun, but what is your dream role for Hanks?
Okay, I have two.
Okay.
One is the movie I just described.
Yeah.
Where it's sort of a later in life trying to find love or trying to save love, or maybe honestly getting a divorce. Something, but about the couple of characters based, that were starring Tom Hanks and Shelley Long. I want them together as a couple.
The Money Pit, yeah.
Not the Money Pit 2.
But I'm just making the reference. So
getting that chemistry back. And doing this kind of later in life romance or fall from romance. But I would actually honestly love a movie I want those two as leads, but honestly I'd rather have a father-daughter relationship movie.
Yeah.
Where it's Tom Hanks exploring a relationship with his young adultish daughter and what that's like. We get pieces of that in A Hologram for the King, but that's not really what that's about.
Yeah.
I want to see The Circle could have been a father-daughter relationship with him and Emma Watson. It wasn't.
Yeah.
But something like that. I would love that. That's dream role number one. Dream role number two has an asterisk, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
And that was Bridge of Spies. There
you go.
What else you got?
I really only have one more that I would want to spotlight and talk about, because I think we've talked about all the other ones at this point. I mean, but Philadelphia.
Yes.
And that one, I think some of his performances are quote unquote big or showy, kind of Forrest Gump is maybe gimmicky. I think it's still great. It's on my list.
It's a good performance.
It's great. But Philadelphia is at his most understated, and it's just such a real movie, and that movie just blew me away based on just how often there's close-ups in that movie, and it just lingers on him, on Denzel, on his family, and just the scene where he is basically kind of dancing to an opera and describing it to Denzel is one of my favorite things. I watched it yesterday, full disclosure, but it just blew me away. And this movie, I mean, it is kind of, it could have been that Oscar bait showy performance, and but it was so ahead of its time, and it's kind of, even today, it's why aren't there more movies about this subject or about, featuring Andrew Beckett? But it was just, I don't know, it was just so powerful, I thought, and affecting, and again, Denzel would be another great foil for him. And it just, I don't know, it was just, understated is the word I just keep coming back to, and it just felt so real, and it felt like the most internal, like what you were talking about, because we see those close-ups and they just kind of linger on him, and then when he's just kind of basically dying on...
The weakness in his voice is heartbreaking, and it's the kind of details you'll forget when you're in the movie.
Right.
Because it's so natural. I think it's a shame that he never got another chance to make another movie with Jonathan Demme, because I think Demme's approach to filmmaking in that classic Hollywood style matches perfectly with what Hanks brings to a dramatic performance.
I would say of any of the directors that he worked with, that would be one where I wish we had seen more.
Yeah.
We saw enough of Ron Howard. I would say we saw enough of Steven Spielberg, even though they're great. They're more successful.
And we have another one on the way.
We do. But Jonathan Demme, unfortunately.
I'll just do a couple of quick shout outs. for just interesting performances or things to note. Catch Me If You Can as Carl Hanratty is just a delightful performance, but I wanted to single it out because it's the one on my list where he's not the lead.
Right.
And it shows how good he is as a co-star. As a supporting actor, he gives it all. And it's terrific.
I was going to actually say that going forward, I wanted to see Tom Hanks more in that kind of Hanratty role, the supporting character in an ensemble, because he is so good at it. He brings that flavor. He can kind of just bring that kind of day player, character actor vibe, and hopefully in a more diverse ensemble where someone else can get the star, the leading thing, but Hanks can just basically, be that scene stealer if he needs to, or just bring what the movie needs.
And the bonus about that is, if he does that, he'll get to be in more movies, so we get to have more episodes of the show.
There you go. Do you want that, though? I mean, you obviously want more movies of Tom Hanks, but, is that something...
I would love it if he was more of a, I would still love some leading Hanks, but if he was, not all cameos, but, if he had, a meaty supporting character role, I'd be so into that. If he had some, good, I feel like before he got on Transparent... Jeffrey Tambor was popping up everywhere every now and again, just having some nice little
or Richard Jenkins is a good one. The guy from I think or Mark Rylance actually
Mark Rylance is fantastic. Yeah,
so I think I would love to see that.
Yeah, I would love to see more of Hanks in general, but I think there's. Yeah, you're right. There's a whole potential that's being untapped with him as a supporting.
And as a supporting actor, you can oftentimes take bigger risks than you might be able to do as a leading role.
Exactly.
And I want to see Hanks take more risks. He definitely has. I think there is a tendency, I was almost going to ask you if at some point, maybe earlier in the show, I might have asked you if Hanks is kind of samey or not bland, but if he does take risks, and I think he does. I think he goes places they don't always work, like Lady Killers and Cloud Atlas. I think does work for me, but not every single one is great.
No. Another risk, Road to Perdition. He's the lead in that one, but it's the first time Tom Hanks was ever scary to me.
Yeah,
I love that. And then. If you want to talk real risks, bad movie, but I had to single it out here because anyone who's just if you're listening to the show, you have this curiosity. If you've somehow missed this movie, you have to see Mazes and Monsters for his turn as Robbie Wheeler because it's not a great performance. It's obviously super early in his career, but it's so bizarre. And it's Tom Hanks, I don't think we ever saw again in terms of the kind of character he played and the kind of performance he gave because it was so
dark,
insane,
and insane,
and legitimately mentally not mentally deficient in a Forrest Gump way, but mentally meltdown, unstable. Yes, that's the perfect word. And just that ending haunts me still, and his reserved delusion, and again, so I love it. And then I have one more performance I got to single out. David S. Pumpkins.
It was going to be that when you set it up like that.
I had to, because he had, 4 movies come out last year? We talked about them all. Most of them were garbage. David S. Pumpkins comes out, and it's this dumb-ass sketch that I'm sure they thought of, the week of, and it's what are we going to do? Let's do this. And because he is so good... It turned into this crazy viral hit. Yeah. And it's not that it is dumb, but there's something really funny going on there. And it just shows how, even at his advanced age, he can just bring it. And there's this electricity to Tom Hanks that we saw in specifically that performance on Saturday Night Live that I haven't seen for a number of years.
I think it was kind of a return to the more magnetic, young, youthful comedy Hanks that we talked about. But also I think because he's done this for 30 years, I think he can just get into it. And it's not as... it's a showy performance, obviously, because it's a sketch. He's supposed to be big as hell. But I think it's almost not refined. But he just knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, and there's no better role that's more demonstrative of his ability to raise the material.
Yeah. Well, there is no material. It's really just let's just say David Pumpkins and then just see Tom Hanks be goofy. Yeah. But kind of creepy. And just, I don't know. Yeah, it's great.
So that's what our top 10-ish roles?
I think.
Is there a linking some sort of connection or familiarity beyond, oh, it's just Tom Hanks in every role.
A through line of all of his performances. I mean, that's a lot to kind of come up with. I mean, do you have something?
I feel like this is very messy, and it's inarticulate. And we've kind of touched on it here and there, and most recently in the Burbs episode where I had this joking mention that every Tom Hanks movie is actually about World War II. But I'm kind of finding more legitimacy to that.
Interesting.
The more I think about it.
Okay.
And maybe not World War II specifically, but in that every Tom Hanks movie and every Tom Hanks performance is sort of about the Hollywood vision of heroism as depicted by World War II in its faults and its rights.
Okay.
Because how do I jump to this?
Just jump.
It's gonna get heavy.
Jump into the volcano, okay. Elvis.
Jumping into the volcano. Going back to, we've talked a lot about like what's going on. Oh, well, you know what? Here's how I'll jump to this. My other dream role for Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
This is the first one I thought of actually, which is strange because I've been saying I want that Shelley Long Tom Hanks movie forever. But my other dream role, and I don't know if I really want this, but my initial thought was, in 10 years' time, when hopefully the world is better, they're going to make a Donald Trump movie. I think he should play Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
I think he's obviously good enough. We've seen through Forrest Gump he can play mentally deficient people really well. But there's also this weird, it's not something I feel certainly, but there's this obvious charm and likability to Trump that so many people get into, and I think you could use Tom Hanks's weaponized charm against them.
Yeah.
The reason I'm cautious is because I don't want this to be a movie that could end up glorifying, lionizing, because that's not what I don't want Tom Hanks, because he'd do it so easily, to humanize this man. If anything, the ideal film here is Stanley Kubrick's Donald Trump movie starring Tom Hanks. Because Stanley Kubrick is always the best at creating distance between you and the humans in the movie, and like coming at it from that different perspective.
Yeah.
And again, the sad part is the way not most, but a lot of people and a lot of very loud white supremacist Nazi people right now, they consume movies and they interpret stories is they need justification in their movies, or they see films as endorsement for things.
Right.
And that's the thing that this theoretical Trump movie could become, especially when you have Hanks as the lead.
Right.
So that's why I'm trepidatious about it, but I think it could be his best performance. I've always talked about, let's trade on his charm for the truly despicable things we can.
Right, and to say something necessary in the culture.
Yeah.
Because I think he doesn't necessarily, but he has done some safe roles where it's just, the rom-com thing, we've done that. We don't need to see more Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks', which if you ask the casual person, I want to see that again. Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a really good, it's bold choice, and I like it. But the problem is if you do it too soon, a lot of times,
the world is not ready for it. The world is not ready for it. God willing, we'll be in a better place. We might not be.
Yeah, we might not be able to do podcasts. And
this might be the last one, even though this is the last one.
Yeah.
And going from springing from that, I think that would be kind of like this weird terminus to his career because, as I said, I feel like there's so many things about Tom Hanks as an actor, as a performer, that encompasses that heroism of World War II, the idealized heroism of World War II, Americana era, and seeing him do Trump in this theoretical Trump movie where it's showcasing how bad of a person he is. And that would be betraying that, he's the nice guy, which is such a pervasive thing in culture right now. It's like, all the white guys, they're just nice, misunderstood, goofy guys, which is we're letting them off the hook, and it's horrifying. And Hanks is the perfect person to subvert that, because if everybody's going to do that when we see him on screen. But if you can make a movie where it's constructed against that.
Yeah, I think that's really smart, and it actually makes me think that, because Tom Hanks, in a way, maybe more than anything, he is a symbol of an America that no longer exists. And
I don't think it ever existed.
Yeah, right. You're right. Exactly. He is the American dream, but he's of course the white male.
Yes.
Personified of that.
I think his like ignoring you can't ignore the race stuff and the gender stuff, but like the ideals of that Americana are good, and that's the great part about Tom Hanks. But it comes with all this baggage, which seems so fitting for the show being called TomHanksgiving, playing off of Thanksgiving, which an American tradition has its own severe baggage as well.
Two thoughts. Well, so adding on to the, him as kind of this, he's basically a baby boomer, right? He is, and that generation is, we see the worst part of that generation right now, where they're not ceding power. They don't care about the future generations.
Did you say they're not seeing power?
They're not ceding.
They're not seeing?
Oh God, I get it.
Not ceding. Yes.
Not ceding power, and there's something to see kind of the downfall or where that baby boomer generation is now through the lens of Hanks as he's older, and that also made me think. And one of the things I wanted to see him do was actually more kind of Broadway or play, like see him on stage. And that made me think of Death of a Salesman. I think he'd be a really good Willy Loman. He'd be the perfect Willy Loman. Because that just shows you kind of the death of America, American dream, and just how his kids have failed him. He's failed himself. He's a shitty person. And I think that is Trump, but like him realizing it at the end. There's parallels there, and I think he'd be so good in that, and I really want to see that. But I think that's the theme, or that journey to kind of realize that you fucked up, that you've just to see what's around you, the awareness, and I think that the kind of that baby boomer Hanks thing, because I think he believes in the same things that we do. And,
I think so too.
And I think he would be a perfect. That's when you can weaponize. Because I don't like weaponize charm in a good way.
Yeah.
But because then it is kind of propaganda, no matter which way you point him in a way. But not like that. Just let's just be real with it and just kind of grapple with that. But I also want to see him use his clout to bring projects like Moonlight or other
stuff that matters. Yeah.
Right. I want him to be involved in that. Just to again cede the floor to someone else, but uses his clout for good and bring those, like, he doesn't have to be in it. Use the producer power, put his name on something so someone else can show their vision to the world.
Well, if he wants us to talk about it, he has to be in it. That's the one rule.
Well, we don't need it. It's not about us.
No, it's not about us. Right.
It's not about the podcast.
Sorry, and that's the thing. That's the thing I'm gonna have to keep reminding myself my entire life is that.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like that thin line of like, yes, I want Tom Hanks to be involved only so he can give someone else the floor,
the shot. Yeah.
So like, if say The Big Sick never would have happened if Tom Hanks hadn't produced it, like that kind of idea where he can just find these diverse opinions and ideas that the world needs out there.
Just for clarity, he did not produce The Big Sick.
No.
It's just I know
exactly.
But yeah, something that Ava DuVernay is doing so great right now. The director of Selma and 13th and the upcoming A Wrinkle in Time. She has a show, Queen Sugar, but she ended up not directing any of the second season episodes because she wanted to give the opportunity to other women and people of color to have that opportunity. And that's something that Hanks can do. I don't know if he's done that, but that's something.
Well, and Ryan Murphy actually has his own initiative that FX has jumped on as well. It's called Half Initiative, where I'm basically trying to get LGBT directors, female directors, just in TV. Yeah. Because it's just so predominantly just white males again. Yeah. And they've seen crazy jumps already through that initiative. So like, I would love to see Hanks put his, the power that he's accrued over the years to wonderful things.
Well, to walk it back a second, Hanks in Death of a Salesman, Hanks as Trump, and Tom Hanks' Shelley Long movie. If Ron Howard hasn't blacklisted us yet, Hollywood, we've got some great ideas for you. Give us a call. Write us TomHanksPod@gmail.com.
I thought you were going to suggest Ron Howard to direct it. I was like, no!
God, no! But it's interesting that we kind of got to this point of talking about, Hanks using his cachet to give the platform to other people. Because it reminds me of a conversation that you and I had, not on the podcast, but right after the election, and I think it was right around the first couple of protests, and kind of feeling this despair and this concern. And I remember kind of having this struggle where it was like, how do I do the right thing when, like, and how do I justify making art or something when that could theoretically be my voice is taking up a slot from someone else's voice, someone who hasn't
more
been heard.
underrepresented.
Exactly. And that's, ignoring the whole false dichotomy of there's a limited number of slots too. I mean, obviously it's different for like a studio, but like art can come from anywhere.
Right.
And and it's not like I'm in a competition with anybody really right now. Anyway, but I remember just having that conversation, and this is leading into a question. But I was going to ask, I want for both of us to talk about like what this show has meant to us. And for me, a thing I didn't expect from this show was this became how I processed a lot of the horrible shit that's going on in the
Yeah,
world.
because I mean, you talk about politics.
It really got baked in as the election and the campaigns were going on, and then.
I mean, it shows our growth as people too, because I think we were kind of in denial or weren't as aware as we should have been about most of these issues, and we were culpable in that.
Yeah.
I mean, people were making jokes about it, or it was not taking it seriously. Now we're in this world that we have to grapple with it, and I think a lot that has changed in the last 2 years, and it seems like. But just having that awareness and knowing that we've been wrong in the past and that it's okay to be wrong.
And we're going to be wrong in the future.
We've been wrong in this episode, I'm sure, 100 times.
Oh, yeah.
Someone's just like, Joker's the volcano is awful. like, what are you talking about? Like, I love You've Got Meg.
Fuck you, Ithaca was good. Sorry, Meg.
Poor Meg Ryan.
Sorry, Meg.
Oh. Meg Ryan could be in the Death of a Salesman thing, too. I think that would actually be really good.
Yeah, I'd rather have her than Shelley Long for that one.
I mean, it's a difficult question. I don't think there's really an answer. I mean, I think we talk a lot about, and we've not mentioned it on the podcast, so we can bring it up, the Art Life. This inspired by David Lynch's Art Life documentary. It wasn't his movie, but he's the subject of it. And this kind of working at our own craft, our art, and what our place is in LA when there's so many greater concerns out there. But to me, the answer is that, the only thing that I might be good at is this. I still haven't gotten there. But if I can bring to light any of these things that are happening, and hopefully with a responsible vision and with the help of people that have different perspectives than me, that can only be a good thing. And I think that's what I'm holding on to. I don't know if that was cogent.
It sounds cogent, I think. But it's interesting. Part of the reason why I was panicking about doing this episode is because, it's the final episode. I feel like I got to come in and have this
lesson
that I've learned, this thesis, this very confident idea. And honestly, for the past couple of months and like some very intense weeks, very recently, I went through like a really strong crisis of identity. I'm not fully out of the woods of it either, but like I feel like, how can I tell people like what I've learned when I feel like less sure of where I'm at and who I am as a person?
Well, that's what you've learned, right? You've learned not to be sure about those things, and you're always learning, and that there isn't, I don't think, you're very rarely going to have a conclusion that's just like, oh, Tom Hanks is everything, or whatever it is. Like, I don't know, like life doesn't boil down into these, and when you get in trouble when you try to like boil it all down to one point. I think we've come up with several conclusions, and I think the kind of post World War II baby boomer Hanks thing, I think that actually is very I didn't know that coming in. That was a great answer, and I think there's something in there. But I mean, the greater lesson though is just kind of always be willing to listen, always be willing to learn about yourself and others.
Yeah.
Because none of us are completed, finished products. Not even Hanks.
No, and it's also just like thinking about where Hanks was at his career when he was my age, and like how I'm like nowhere near that, and it's just like there's a lot of insecurities, and it's crazy.
Is you as an artist, are you like, obviously you emulate Hanks.
Well,
we all. Well,
but I'm not even an actor.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like your goal here is writing, directing.
Yeah.
And not the acting thing. So it's an entirely different scenario for.
True.
Not that it's any easier or harder for one of those things.
No.
But they're apples and oranges, kind of.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole thing, although I don't know if I would want to follow Hanks's directorial career so much. Despite the fact that, like, I've kind of gone through, and I'm still going through, like, I don't know where I am with my life, and, like, I'm nervous. Like, here's the thing. Because this is the final episode of this show proper, we're not going to do this every week, or even after a hiatus and come back. There was so much of, like, me, like, honestly, I got something out of every movie I watched. I think for the most part, I'm really glad I did it, but like there's a part of it that was just exhausting, and I was like, oh, I gotta talk about Tom Hanks again. What am I gonna say this time? Father Figure, World War II.
Right. Well, and is it also kind of like it almost feels like a procrastination to other more personal
a little bit,
projects?
and that's part of why I'm so glad I ended up doing a podcast that had 62 movies to talk about and not 7 seasons of a show.
6 shows of Gossip Girl, yeah.
Because there was this end in sight, because I feel like I've been neglecting other things I want to pursue that are less commentary on other art and more my own creations.
We'll take what you've learned from this.
And do
life.
that.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at this so much as a finish line, this episode, but it didn't hit me until this week that maybe part of the reason why I was having such struggles and hard, like, who am I, is because this is also a farewell. I'm saying goodbye to a very significant part of my life. I know it's just always been a silly Tom Hanks podcast, but it's kind of been a whole thing I've based my identity around for the past 2 years. And, like, I'll always have it. It's not going anywhere, but it's kind of, like, I'm just now realizing, like, okay.
It's time to move on.
It's going away. I'm giving the toys to Bonnie.
So is Bonnie taking over the podcast?
Well, I tried to give it to Jeffrey. He was terrible. No one's getting the keys to the podcast, but I am putting things away in the toy box for now.
Yeah.
And, I think that's a good thing.
It's always fun to bring out the toys every couple of years.
Exactly, yeah.
You have a greater appreciation for them if you,
So I think that's been something I've been struggling with too, because it's how do we say goodbye, and like I'm losing this part of myself, and I'm excited because this will hopefully this energy and this enthusiasm will go towards something else, which will be even better, more exciting, hopefully. That's what I've gotten out of this podcast. I've also, it's crazy because I've actually made friends through this podcast because I've been, friends with other podcasters, and we've ended up actually meeting in person, having conversations. And I've gotten to have, chat, and it's been an excuse to hang out with, like, really cool people and, like, some of my best friends, and just, like, have really meaningful conversations. Like, every time outside of Happy Days, which was fun. We just didn't have as fun of a time as the other ones. But, like, every time we've hung out and done one of these, it's been an absolute delight. And I hope...
it's an excuse to hang out with, with your friends and future friends. And also, like, and I think this is one thing I've taken away from this podcast and living with you and knowing you, is that the talking about movies, I think I've gotten a lot more deeper in that and getting more out of them and having those discoveries. Because before it was kind of like what I feel at the time, and we didn't delve into them.
Yeah, actually forcing yourself to pay attention to the media you consume and think about it. And more important than the movies that we've celebrated this time has been the conversations. So I'm going to say that TomHanksgiving, the podcast, is more important than Tom Hanks's career. The point being that having these conversations has really changed how we think about things, life, not just movies. And each other. And I think, like, so many of the things we just covered today, I never would have had and I think I'm a relatively insightful guy when it comes to movies, but if we hadn't had conversations, I never would have come to those conclusions.
Right.
I may never have seen the darkness in The Burbs or the beauty in Joe versus the Volcano. And I think this is the one takeaway, if you're going to take it from this show, is, see more movies, but
pay attention
and talk about them, because half of these shows I didn't know how I felt about the movie or what it was really about until we were done with the episode. And I'm gonna have to just do that without a microphone from now on. But these conversations, and like the conversations you, the listener, should have with your friends and family, and like that's gonna go a long way, because maybe if some of these white supremacist guys had just had conversations about the burbs, maybe they'd think a little differently.
Right, or actually just talk to the people that they hate or fear. But
they're the ones not listening.
Right. And
as I interrupt you.
No, it's okay. But I mean, yeah, these conversations matter. And I mean, while TomHanksgiving is kind of ending, the conversations aren't.
No.
And I think, I mean, I look forward to watching many more movies with you and many more discussions. And I think, I mean, yeah, I've definitely learned a lot from this podcast. And I think pop culture, you can say whatever you want about it, but it does matter. Sometimes, unfortunately.
Oh, it's like today it's undeniable how much influence pop culture has. We have a reality star as a fucking president.
Exactly. And so it just teaches you to, be aware, and also just like what this art that you consume is saying, and try and make it better. Try have conversation with people. I think that's the takeaway. Don't attack someone for disagreeing with you, or don't attack a movie or an actor or a director, Ron Howard, for for making mistakes. Like,
well, I'm not saying
no.
Criticism is necessary.
Absolutely.
Now more than ever.
Yeah. But there's that fine line of just open a dialogue and just try and ask questions and try and listen.
And pay attention to the movies. I hate this idea of, I just want to shut off my brain for a while. Don't do that. If you're going to do that, don't do it with movies, because movies, you might not realize what you're ingesting.
One of my least favorite things is if I say something like, if I take a Star Wars movie super seriously and someone's like, it's just a movie, it's just a blockbuster, whatever, but I'm like, but that has the most eyes on it of anything that's going to be made, and this is an opportunity for, I mean, it's a corporation, but like to say something positive and good. And if they don't, for me, that's a missed opportunity. That's upsetting to me. Whether it's unfair or not to go to it. I mean, going to a Star Wars movie, going to a Tom Hanks movie, and expecting there to be a good message in there, I mean, you're not always going to get one.
Even if there's not good message, like take something as mind-numbing theoretically as the Transformers franchise. You don't want to go in there and shut your brain off, because there's so many just like crazy mixed messages, and it's all mostly garbage and bad. But it's saying so much about American culture, because these are the most popular movies in the country.
In China, it's China's most. It's China, like the most highest grossing. So whatever they're putting in those movies is what the rest of the world thinks America is, in a way, and that's scary to me.
Yeah,
people think that we're the Transformers country. Like, ew,
which is frightening. And
we kind of are, and that's what's the most frightening.
And that's why any movie, you can't shut off your brain. There's always something to engage with there, and there's always conversations to be had. Except for in the future on this show, because this is the last episode. We're about done. Do you have any last thoughts?
I feel like we've covered it.
Well, I'll just say we kind of talked about Nazis today, and it comes up a lot on this show. And for those of you who have always been like annoyed that the political stuff comes out and like have contend this show for talking about Nazis, it's like, have you paid attention to any of Tom Hanks's movies?
Yeah.
But there is a lot of scary evil and hate and fear in the world right now, and it's getting louder and more normalized, and it's getting a seat at the table, and it's scary and it sucks, but
it's not okay.
And it's not gonna necessarily get better. But the thing is, if I'm going to give any advice as any sort of authority whatsoever, I guess I'm gonna say, don't be afraid to still be silly, to still love, to still enjoy the good things, the fun things, the silly things like Tom Hanks movies. Yes, we have to pay attention and fight against all the shit that's going on, and we have to be better people, and we have to fix things, and we're going to be wrong in doing so, but it's going to be hard, but you can't stop the love. You can't stop the happy.
Oh, absolutely.
We need it now more than ever. So what do you think the Hanksiest line was? All of Tom Hanks.
Oh my God.
No.
What was this one on Bridges Spies?
Taxi!
It was basically as simple as one word.
It's either that, you are a toy!
That one.
Yeah. Or all of Turner and Hooch, honestly.
When the world's gone mad, oh, turn to America's dad. Oh, we'll come together, don't you see? Oh, Tom Hanks is for you and for me.
TomHanksgiving has been a production of Splot Studios, created and hosted by me, Elvis Kunish. I couldn't have done today's show without my wonderful guest and semi-regular co-host, Andy Greene.
Woo, that's me. I'm so honored to be on the show as many times as you brought me on, and you can find me at Wandering Green on Twitter, Instagram, maybe Facebook, and I am at Gossip Guys Pod as well, and I am on this journey watching all the Gossip Girl episodes with my co-host Aaron, and we, like Elvis, we are learning about ourselves along the way. It's not about the Upper East Side.
Well, it is and it isn't.
It is and it isn't.
Hit him up. Listen to the show.
Yeah, I've been honored to take this journey as well.
Thanks, Andy. I know I'm not alone because of you. I'd also like to take this chance to thank every single one of my guests from the bottom of my heart. Talking with you cool folks has meant the world to me. So thank you to Terry Wesley, Colin Dunning, Samantha Garrison, John Brickley, Elliot Campos, Melvin Benson, Cody Camp, Mickey Petrositis, Stephen Brandon, Tom Cameron, D'Artagnan London, Chris Lamb, David Cope, Sungwon Cho, Sarah Pohl, Ali Vingiano, Joe Hood, Jacob Reed, Henry Lovner, Garrett Werner, Kevin McShane, Aaron Davidian, Jenny Lorenzo, George Kaplan, Brian Dressel, Minzui Korami, Julian Terry, Tyler Williams, Karen Du, Arlil Rodriguez, Chloe Zach, Ben Shern, Brittany Ashley, Mitchell Bishop, John Marquis, Jeffrey Vega, Lauren Scharf, Chewy Darso, Emily Blake, and of course to Greg Krajewski, who in addition to being a guest, made 4 amazing theme songs for the show. You can follow him on Twitter at GregOrJK. And thanks to you and everyone who's listened to the show, you've made this whole experience worthwhile. On top of all that, I'd like to offer my sincere gratitude to every single person from cast, crew, post, marketing, facilities, and all hands that touch each and every last film, show, and sketch we discussed on the show, even the ones we didn't like. Because the reality of it is that filmmaking is insanely difficult, and the hard work you put into even the crummiest of projects is something to be cherished. Thank you for your art and your efforts. Yes, even you, Ron Howard. And of course, the show would have been nothing without the man himself, Mr. Thomas Jeffrey Hanks. Thanks for your continued talent, dedication, and inspiring humanity. I'll get you on the show yet. To make sure you don't miss when we do get Tom's interview and all future Hanks film discussions, stay subscribed to the show and follow us on Twitter at TomHanksPod, so that when a new episode pops up, you'll know right away. In the meantime, if you can't bear to say goodbye, you can keep up with me and my monkey shines by following me on Twitter and Instagram at Elvis Kaboom, and keep an eye on my future projects at splotstudios.com. We have a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline, including a big old 10-year anniversary special in September that I have to start getting ready. And I think that's finally it, folks. So until next time, Hanks for listening.
Tom Hanks, we fell in love with you, Tom Hanks, just like so many do deeply, because you made us smile, and your great on-screen style. So that's why we give thanks, 'cause you got a friend in Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks.
Splot Studios, your one-stop shop for 80s horse Malachowski. Fuck. This is the last episode of this show. Oh, I don't think we said this up front, but it's not actually the last episode of the show. Oh, let me fucking shut the goddamn door.
Oh my, we'll edit that out. He's talking about my car door.
I'm your trampy Canadian cross-dresser.
Your cross-friend dresser.
Damn it.
You're always on your game, Greene. You gotta bring it.
Need to put some quarters in Zoltar.
Saying no gossip, guys. Speak a little louder. Go a little closer to the mic.
I was speaking louder.
Look at this. This is the busiest Burbank's ever been.
Speaking of the terminal.
Okay, this is our 4th of July episode. Oh boy.
Happy 4th of July.
Right.
It's only the 10th of June.
Well, we're getting ahead.
You're so much better at planning than I am.
No. No, I'm not. Every time we mistake him, we're going to start over from the very beginning.
Okay, so I won't get out of this house. I'm back. I'm moving in.
Satan is your buddy. Satan is your pal.
I'm joined by the Woody... No, fuck. Let me... Damn it!
Yes, I'm Woody!